We've got Michael Moynihan, who's at the ceremony, the 80th anniversary
No, no,
commemoration.
no.
Yep, in Poland, is just joining us quickly. Michael, thanks for making time. Just tell us what it's like there, what you've seen, and what you expect today.
I mean, it's pretty impressive. We're indoors, but this, if you can see right behind me, is the actual entrance to Birkenau, the second camp in this enormous sprawling complex. But we just sat down for the survivors that were coming in. Last time they had something like this, there were, I think it's like 200, maybe a little more survivors. Now it's under 30. I think they had 17 or something. And they just came in, and but so it's pretty intense in that way. But lots of dignitaries. King Charles is here, King of Sweden, et cetera. So it hasn't started yet, but it's been pretty impressive. And look, it's also a time to be talking about this right after Elon Musk gives a speech to the AfD in Germany, in which he says the Germans have to get over their memory complex. And of course, this is nothing but a monument 80 years later to the liberation of Auschwitz to memory. I was just talking to a guy who said that the group that he was with bought Rudolf Höss's house, not Rudolf Höss, Rudolf Höss was the commandant of Auschwitz, and the house that's recreated in Zone of Interest was actually in private hands, and they just bought it to make a museum out of it. So the issue of memory, which is the only thing I've been thinking about and discussing for the past couple of days, it's pretty interesting that it's coming out of the mouth of Elon Musk at a conference for a far-right party in Germany.
Dan.
So, Michael, what is the mood, or is there talk about the fact that the post-World War II order that was largely successful for the last 80 years is kind of coming apart, and no one kind of knows what's going to come out the other end?
Yeah.
How are people thinking about that? I mean, it's prevented a repeat, and now something new will be here.
Well, it's funny. Somebody said to me the other day, if a Jew could pick a place to be, and they were in Europe, they would probably pick Poland, which is, of course, where all the death camps were, and some a little bit into Ukraine. And that is because of a simple reason, and it's not me talking, that hasn't been a huge immigration issue here. There's not Muslim immigration like you have in Germany and France, et cetera. So that conversation, they're having a huge conversation about immigration here now, because obviously Lukashenko on the border of Belarus is trying to destabilize Europe by sending migrants over. He has said, if you can get a ticket to come to Minsk, we will get you over the border. And that is the conversation now. I mean, after the Ukraine conversation, there was flooded with refugees. That conversation's calmed down considerably since the last time I was in Poland. And now is a big conversation about immigration, because they've very, very tight borders here. And yesterday in the SEM, in the Polish parliament, there was a discussion about cutting off welfare payments to anybody who is not a citizen, or somebody who doesn't have a work permit and is not currently employed. I mean, it's a very, very similar argument that you have to what's happening in America, but with a more global perspective, and saying that, like, we don't want these people coming in and destabilizing the country, because that's the goal. So most of the conversation here in Poland about the post-war order does, of course, have to do with Vladimir Putin. Poland, of course, GDP, the highest spending on military is in this country now. That was not true 5 years ago. So there's an enormous difference. The military has become the focus of a lot of the budget. So,
Sean.
Michael, first, thank you for joining us and bringing this. I was thinking about the context of what's going on today in two American ways. One, in the sense of World War II, that we continue to lose World War II veterans, and we're trying to capture that and to teach these lessons to young people. And also 9/11, that I was thinking about it this morning in the context of what we're remembering over there. And just that fewer and fewer people now, especially folks in the military, were alive on 9/11. And how do we preserve the memory of what happened on that fateful day? How do we make sure that we never forget? And you were talking about the survivors that were coming through. And my understanding is it's now down to, just over a dozen that are there today.
yeah.
What is being done to preserve their memory, to preserve their understanding of history?
Well, look, I mean, there seems to be.
I'm sorry, their experience for history, not their history, but
Well, look, I mean, it's a very good question, because I mean, there's a certain urgency that you hear in all the speeches we read at dinner last night. You know, October 7th comes up in every speech. I mean, the resurgence of anti-Semitism comes up in every speech. Someone said last night, and I can't remember the speaker said, you know, we thought anti-Semitism was over. Yeah, Middle East it happens. Europe seems to have been, you know, a little different than it was in the past. I mean, Germany has dealt with its guilt in a pretty interesting and pretty direct way. And we thought it was over. And then, of course, you see this upswing in anti-Semitism in the US and in Europe. The memory stuff here is pretty interesting because Poland Poland has a number of laws about memory, by the way. You cannot actually legally call where we are now. We are at the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. You cannot call this a Polish concentration camp. It is a German concentration camp in Poland. It is against the law. And this is a law from about 5 or 6 years ago. So the constant conversation about memory, I mean, there's lustration laws in Poland about people who served for the SB, the Communist Secret Police. There's laws about, you know, what information you can put out about them. So the conversations about memory are constant political conversations. It's not a kind of thing, well, it's the anniversary, it's 80 years, so therefore we're talking about it. There is a constant conversation. You know, I was this morning at a planned socialist city that Stalin made in 1951. And to hear people talk about it, it's a pretty remarkable thing in the way they talk about their communist past. And again, codified into laws, but it's constantly present. You see it. Everywhere you go, people say, well, that's a very Soviet building. That's a Soviet era building. And, you know, the old Communist Party headquarters here is now, I think, a Kentucky Fried Chicken, which I thought was the greatest victory of all time. So there's some victories in here, too. Oh, but and by the way, the square, the town I was in today, where there used to be a huge Lenin statue, is now called Ronald Reagan Square. So there's a lot of history all the time.